Is it? I got a red light on here. Nope. Go ahead.
Today is May 17th, 1997. We're here at Emporia, Kansas at the 12th Armored Division picnic. And I'm interviewing Donald J. Herron.
Well, don't worry about it. Nobody pronounces it right.
And Marge Herron. Donald was part of the 12th Armored Division. He was part of the 134th Battalion. He was an international harvester. I guess I'm going to start with, what were your parents like when y'all were little?
Well, I suppose I should tell everything, right?
Just
I come from an unstable home. My mother was married 5 times. And I think that Margaret was a stabilizing aspect. We're married 54 years, right?
almost.
Go on. Okay. And we've had a happy marriage. We have 3 wonderful children, 9 precious grandchildren.
And my parents, well, they were German descent, not real disciplinarians, but a loving family, and there were 5 of us kids. Very nice growing up.
What was it like for your families during the 1920s and 1930s?
My life and my family was a hectic one, but my generation at that time was quite naive. There were men over the house a lot of times, and I never questioned one word. Obviously, my mother was, well, obviously she wasn't the best mother she should have been, but as I said, we were naive, and I never suspected anything until I got a little older and began to realize something's not right here.
But through the war years, I mean,
Oh.
before the war,
Yeah.
your dad had a job the whole
Yeah.
time.
Oh, I come as far as monetary situation. My dad was always employed. Father number 2. My dad was always employed completely through the Depression age. He worked for AT&T. So we never wanted for anything except, as I say, family love, which was not part of our environment.
And ours was just the opposite. There were 5 of us kids, and the Depression hit us like so many did. My dad worked wherever he could find a job, and we got along fine though, and it made impressions on me that he doesn't have to this day because of going through that. But we were happy, and
What was your educational background prior to going into the military?
Well, I have 4 years of high school and 2 years of business college. Where I see, my ambition was to be a court reporter. So I majored in shorthand and all the subjects that correlated with it. And that's probably one of the reasons why I was put in the battalion I was, because of my educational background. And as it so happens, I never took shorthand one time in the 4 years I was in service. Right. Go ahead.
and mine, I just had high school.
What impact did Pearl Harbor have on y'all?
Oh, definite impact. We were thinking about getting married. What did we say? We couldn't afford it, so we waited. Pearl Harbor, which is on December 7th, 1939, right?
No, 41.
39. Oh, that was invasion of Poland. 41. Yeah, and I didn't enter service till October 31st, which is Halloween, 1942.
Well, the impact,
And we then began basic training, which was, what did we have, 13 weeks? Was it? And then she couldn't come down with us until were completed. So on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1942, chapel number 9, 9:10 p.m., we were married.
Out of camp.
And we spent a 3-day honeymoon for the total cost of $22.50. Amazing, right?
That's right. That is amazing. So you said that, what was your work experience prior to going to the Army?
Prior to the Army? Oh, I was in the same business I was all my life. I worked for a drug wholesaler, specializing in pharmaceuticals. So I spent most of my time in what we call telephone sales. I solicited business over the telephone.
Part of it,
Huh?
just part of it.
Part of the time, right? And you didn't, yeah, you worked. What did you do? I forgot already.
Well, I did general office work and then bookkeeping and things like that.
What was it like for you when you entered the Army? What was your experience?
Well, at first, I'm very short, as you can see, and I was very conscious of my height, but I found out that us little guys could outwalk the big ones. So, for obvious reasons, we don't carry the body weight, you know. And the 30-miler didn't kill me, and a lot of those big guys had to give up. They didn't make it all the way. And I don't mean any disrespect to them. They just, their body structure is so much different. And so I was very proud of that. And they used to call me the feather merchant. And to this day, I don't know what that means. Nobody will tell me. I asked a lot of people. I don't know what it means. But as far as the service is concerned, it was definitely an asset to me. It gave me something I never had before, self-confidence. Go ahead.
Honey, I wasn't in service.
Describe what camp life was like for you.
Camp life?
Oh, yeah, well, I was happened to be with a very nice bunch of GIs, and most of them was older, so they kind of took me under their wing and treated me like a son, which we had Phil as old as 43 years of age, and I was 19, so I obviously had good care. And as I said, I enjoyed every moment of it. As rough as it was physically, we had a rough DI, which is another word for drill instructor. And I think I remember the first day we were in, he called us to attention, and I had my nose itched, and I reached up and scratched, and he come tearing over in front of me, bawling the living hell out of me. And he said, "How am I ever going to make a soldier out of you?" Well, he did. I'm a little emotional, so.
It's fine.
But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the 30-mile marches. I enjoyed the bivouacs. And it was probably the best physical condition I've ever been in. Right?
Well, Don.
Go ahead. Okay.
Describe your training activities that you
Training activities. Reveille at 5:30. Then we ate, and I have to say I wasn't particularly happy with the Army food. You probably heard a lot about it.
Well, some had good chefs, but
Yeah, SOS was, I'm not going to tell you what they called that, but that was cream beef that they put over biscuits, and unbelievable. And I can remember our mess sergeant, a salad to him was with cubed pickles and cheddar cheese. That was his version of a salad. But you ate it because you were hungry, and you worked it off because you had physical exercise. So I never complained about the Army food too much, did I?
well, when I was down there,
Yeah.
we'd eat at the service club and
Oh, I should
Things like
mention
that.
that you were down with me a lot as soon as she could.
I was down with them 6 months at Campbell. We got married after, well, basic training.
We drove a 34 Plymouth convertible, which used 1/4 oil per hour.
But that was down to Barkley
Oh, that's Barkley.
to get
Can
to
you imagine that? You know, the engines in those days were not high compression, you could get away with it. And when we left Barkley to go overseas, it was still running, and I got more for it than we bought it for. Got it for $99. We had a lot of good times in it, didn't we?
What kind of buddies did you make when you were in training?
What kind of what?
Buddies, friends?
Oh, a lot of buddies.
A lot of them.
134th, very close unit. We had a lot of many technicians, being harvester people, not all, but we had technicians in every field of endeavor. And of course, then they took specialized training in repairing and managing a 75 millimeter gun, a 76 millimeter gun, the 450 horsepower Ford tank engine, and every aspect of the 6x6 trucks, the half tracks, every kind of vehicle. And it was the ordnance job to keep the division rolling. So obviously our technicians maintained every tank, every truck, every Jeep, every half track. So as you can obviously see, major of the men were very technical minded. And if they weren't, if they didn't know what was necessary, they were sent to school for it.
Well, you were in headquarters.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a mechanic, but he was in charge of keeping track of all these machineries and all that. So,
For some reason, and I know this sounds critical, for some reason sometimes, and I don't mean this to sound conceited, the fellows with the higher IQs seem to get some of the best jobs. I know that's not the way it should be, but it seemed to work that way. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Describe your sergeants and officers you had and that you remember in training.
your sergeants and officers you had in training.
Well, again, this drill session, his name was Lieutenant Howard Baker, rougher than a cob, but he put together one of the best marching platoons in the division, right? Except we had one. I'm sure you all know of some person that's totally uncoordinated.
Yeah.
First we stick him in the back row, then in the middle, then on one side. So finally he got so frustrated, he put him in charge of the day room, which was our recreation room. So he was no longer in our platoon. So as a consequence, we were ranked the #1 marching platoon during basic training.
What about other officers or sergeants?
One of our officers and sergeants, I was blessed with some rough but fair. And they have to be rough. There's no substitute in the military for discipline.
Well, Major Malcolm.
Huh? And I worked for a Major Malcolm, a Robert McMiniman, all excellent. One was of course the Major was a field grade officer, and I was blessed to serve under excellent officers.
Describe the barracks and what they were like.
Our barracks was a 2-story barracks, and we had single cots in those days. I don't know what it is today. So each one had their own private cot, and of course at the foot of each cot was your foot locker, with specific instructions as to how that foot locker is to be arranged. No excuses. That's it. And of course your bed, the blanket had to be pulled tight enough so the inspecting officer could bounce a $50 off of it. So I know this sounds funny to some people, but I really enjoyed it. I think, as I said previously, service was good for me.
What was your reaction, I mean, what was your recreational activities at Camp Campbell that you were involved?
Going to the service club and you could eat a meal cost us 50 cents.
I think it was about that.
And then going to what we call our day. Well, I turned out to be an excellent ping pong player. I still love to play, but I was company champ in ping pong. Probably because I played a lot of tennis in high school. I don't know if that carried over, but what else could you do? We started out at $21 a month and then we went up to 50.
Yeah, nobody had much money in those days. It isn't like now in here. It's a lot different.
What were your Tennessee maneuvers like?
What?
Tennessee maneuvers like?
Oh, Tennessee maneuvers, that was a very rare experience. We had two to a pump tent. And I was with my pump tent mate was what? He was about 6'2" tall, so
Chuck Whittier.
he would cuddle over me, and then when we turned, I would cuddle over him. And one night, I'll never forget this, in maneuvers in Tennessee. I don't know if you're familiar with a king snake. They're huge in size, but they're harmless. And we woke up, and Chuck said, "Don, look what's wrapped around our feet." There was a king snake. You never seen a pup tent go out of the ground as fast in your life. Oh, I don't have any fondness for snakes. I know they're harmless, but the appearance of them scared the heck out of you. But the maneuvers was a learning situation. I'll tell you what a mistake I made. I was on guard duty, and I forgot the password. They only told me once, so consequently I was prisoner. Oh, did I get hell for that? Now, maneuvers, Tennessee, have you ever been in Tennessee?
Yes, I have.
It's a beautiful country, the hills. And we saw I had heard the expression hillbillies. I'm sure you've heard that expression. But I never believed I would see. We saw houses with no doors, no windows. People didn't wear shoes. I don't know what they existed on. But that was part of their life. I suppose today that's all past tense.
What was your job in your unit, Nick?
In service,
Uh-huh.
I was assigned to the division ordnance office, and my specific job was to keep a constant inventory control of all major items, which would be your tanks, every major equipment. Then we had a clerk that would take care of the ammunition supplies, and another one would be parts and supplies. So that was my job constantly, even into combat over in Germany, France and Germany.
What was it like for you to be married to him when he was in camp and going through all that?
Well, we were just happy that we could be together, and we didn't do that awfully much down
We
there.
didn't have any
But
money to do it.
you had good friends, and you'd get together that way.
See, hotel rent then was, you're not going to believe this, $2.50 a day. And you'd get a 6-course dinner for 50 cents. And a movie theater was a dime, wasn't it? That's only the activity we really had, except out in camp at the service clubs where we go out to dinner.
And the places that you got to rent were nothing much to live in. We were lucky. The first place we had was at a big, it almost looked like, well, it had the pillars, the white pillars in front of the house.
Like a plantation,
Yeah.
trying to say. And we paid, what, $25 a month?
It wasn't much.
And
it
25 cents a meal.
meals. Oh, but some of those people, some of the service people, they lived in almost like a chicken coop
Oh, sure.
that they would make into something
Make it
to
into a
live in.
bedroom on the farm. And
Just
no front
terrible.
door, just a roof over their head. I don't know
But
what
that was
they
all
had
you
for
could
toilet
find.
facilities.
And
But
to be together, that's.
to be
what you-
together, we're willing to put up with that.
But we didn't have to do that.
Did you ever have any contact with General Brewer?
Did I what?
Have any contact with General Brewer?
No, but I had contact with General Allen. I was assigned to him in Germany, which is our commanding general, and two of us were assigned. We had to have prepared for him every morning at 5:30 a.m. exactly how many casualties we had the day before, how many functional vehicles would be available to him the next day. That would include every major moving stock, the tanks, the half-tracks, the trucks, the jeeps, weapons carriers. And so it was a responsible job. So we did that. We worked all night, and the MPs would bring us information as to what happened during that given combat day. So I found that very interesting. We took some savage beatings sometime. The Germans were a very formidable opponent, as we all know. But the Hellcats took care of it, didn't they? We were ranked as one of the second, third, and fourth were regular Army. Outside of those three, as far as combat efficiency, 12th Army, number 4.
What was it like for y'all when you knew that you were going to leave and go over to Germany?
What was it like for us when we found out you were going overseas?
Rough. But it was necessary. She drove that car home. How many
No, I
times?
didn't.
Oh, you did? Oh, we sold it down there, right?
Yeah.
You left in August, right? August of 44. And we took the train to Camp Shanks, New York. And what's ironic about this, we stopped in the Chicago railway lines, which was only 80 miles from home. And you can't think how tempted I was to go over the hill when
A lot of the guys
I
felt the
wouldn't do
same way.
something like that. And then we trained to Camp Shanks, New York. We had a 8-hour furlough to New York to see the sights, and the next day we embarked on the Empress of Australia. Should I tell you about that boat?
Yeah.
My God. We were on the, we couldn't have been any lower. We were on the lower deck, and I said to my buddy, I said, look, we got tables, we can eat on tables. Well, what we didn't know, you ate on them, you slept on them, you did everything on them or below them. And if you ever smelled English mutton, you know, that's what, this was an English boat, and that's what we were fed. Mostly English food. And I was sick on a dog for 10 days. I hope you're not cursed with seasickness. Of course, they got remedies for that today. But you die, it's like dying and you can't. You know, you're gagging, you got like the dry heaves, but once it leaves you, you can go back on the fantail and it doesn't bother you. But that was the only thing. So I obviously did not enjoy that voyage.
What did you do when you were in New York? You said you got an 8-hour furlough.
Well, I went up on the, what was that called? What's that, Waldorf Astoria? Up on
Yeah.
and we were there long enough to take a
Empire State.
a barge out to the, what's that? Statue of Liberty. And I walked all the way up the circle stairs up to the far as they let us. Magnificent thing. Of course, that today it was badly in need of repair then. That's all been renovated, I understand. You know. Have you ever been to New York?
Yep.
Traffic, unbelievable.
And you called home,
Called home that night, yeah.
stood in a long line.
And she was a loyal, faithful wife.
What was your feelings when you ended up in Tidsworth, England.
Ended up with one.
And you ended up in Tidworth.
Tidworth.
Well, there again, I was lucky. For some reason, I was picked. The convoy going overseas ran into bad weather, and our ships were all over ports in England. So I was immediately sent to, first I was promoted to sergeant then, and I was sent to London. So we worked in SHAFE headquarters, going through ship manifests to find our equipment. So we finally did locate it, and then what do you think happened? General Patton confiscated all our tanks. So in reality, he probably did us a favor because we were then equipped with a new M4A3E8, which we called EZ8, with a 76 millimeter gun with a muzzle velocity, a much more effective weapon than the 75 millimeter. So as it happens, he probably, as I said, in reality did us a favor.
What did you think about General Patton?
Well, he talked to us in England. I have to say, that's the most unusual vocabulary I ever heard. I don't think I should tell you to the camera what he said to us, but his it was not good. However, he was a good general. He copied Rommel's methods. You know, Rommel was a German tank master, and his theory was hit them hard, hit them fast. Your casualties may be heavy at once, but then it's over. So in the long haul, your calories should be lighter.
What do you remember about the first, excuse me, your first combat experience that you were
I
in?
remember freezing to death in the bedroll. I remember, I'll tell you, the worst combat, the first one that I can remember, was in the city of Colemar, and the Germans had a railroad gun, which they only used at night, and they fired every 7 minutes. And naturally, we're all in the basement. If it would have hit your house, you'd have been a gone goose, because totally destroyed. But God was with me or whatever, so our building wasn't hit, but we lost a lot of men that night. I'll never forget that.
Describe what crossing the channel was like for you.
Oh, I died. That's only 26 miles. And I went over on an LST, which was landing ship tank, and I was, excuse the expression, sick to my stomach all the way over. Didn't take, what I think, 4 hours. We were on a flat LST, which carries tanks. And, ooh, as I said, you want to die and you can't.
What was your relationship between you and the 12th, between you at the 12th Armored Division and the French civilians that you encountered?
Can I be candid?
Yes, you maybe can.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned, the French were very nasty to us. They were sarcastic. I heard the expression, "Go home, Yank." I didn't want to be there in the first place. And I'll just say this as advent to it. After the war was over, our enemy people were friendlier to us than the French. That may sound caustic, but I'm being honest with you. This was particularly true in the major cities. The French small towns, that was entirely different. But in Paris, Strasbourg, Nancy, any of those towns we were at, they were not nice to us. I hope that doesn't shock you. Have you heard that before? Oh, yeah.
Describe the crew that you were a member of.
What?
The crew that you were a
The
member
crew that you were a member of.
Oh,
The group you
the
were
group?
with.
Oh, fantastic. They were all specialists. I was the only non-harvester. Johnson, Malcolm, McMenamin. Yeah, I was the only, there was 4 of us. And I was the only non-harvester, and the only reason I was put in there is because on my, what do we call your Army record? What do they call that? God, I can't even remember. It would have had my capabilities. 213 was clerk, short stenographer. And so I could take short, and I never took it one time.
What experiences did you have with battle casualties?
Too many, unfortunately. Our dearest, I can't remember their name, can you? That couple we used to see dancing, we had to evacuate his tank, which was hit at Colemar. And he was the driver. And so we opened up the turret, and there his body was. And the only way I could identify him was he had a bracelet which did not burn. And when a tank burns like that, your body, your carcass, it actually welds to the seat. So our welders had to cut him out. I'll never forget that. Excuse me. That's all.
What experience did you have with Hurlshine?
Hurlshine? We evacuated the tanks. In the ordnance, we took our huge tank recovery vehicles, which could handle a tank with weight up to 45 ton. And this was our biggest loss. Have you heard this about Hurlshine?
Sure that.
Our intelligence told us that there was only a German troops in a rest area, when in reality it was a SS Panzer division. And they walked into a trap. And when we evacuated those tanks, some of those turrets weren't even turned. So they were hit before they knew it hit them. And it was a tragic loss. It was a big lesson to learn, you know. Our tank commanders learned a big lesson, but that's the worst I've ever seen. I think we lost a whole total of, there's what, 18 tanks to a company. I think we lost all 18. They were evacuated and put in repair to be used again, but that was our teacher, so to say. It never happened again. We were prepared from then on.
What was your experience with POWs?
Oh, yeah, you're talking about prisoners of war or the displaced people?
Prisoners of war or displaced people, it's up to you.
Oh, we captured thousands of prisoners of war. The only ones that would shake their fist at you, or excuse the expression, were the SS boys. And for some reason, maybe I shouldn't say this, a lot of them that never made it to the back lines because they spit on them. You know, they were what's the right word for sinister, dedicated, nasty people? They thought nothing of killing another person because they were trained to do that.
Did you have any, okay, I'm trying to think of how to ask the question. Did you have any experience with the death camps?
Oh yes, we our particular company or battalion captured Landsberg. And this was only a phase of Landsberg. This particular camp was not even of the Jewish people. They even did this to political prisoners. So we did get there fast enough. We captured a SS guard, and what we did is turn them over to the inmates. This is probably awful if you want to hear this, but they beat them to death. So then, out of compassion for these poor people, our baker people made a whole 6x6 back end full of loaves of bread. And when you get that hungry, your sense of smell is so acute that they smell it coming. And he told me, the truck driver told me, I'm sure I ran over some to get away from them. They dumped the bread on the road, as crude as that sounds, and then he got away because when you get in that kind of shape, obviously your mind is not working correct. The most pitiful thing, and this is going to make you nauseous, but we knew we were coming to it because this was in April and it was warm enough, we could smell. So we made the townspeople come in and bury them. And of course, I don't know whether I could disbelieve them. They said they didn't know the camp was there. But how could they not know when it was only 4 kilometers away? But I never would believe that one human being could do that to another.
Can you describe the operation at Colemar?
Oh yes, Colemar was the last pocket in southern France, and we were assigned to eliminate it. And we the 12th Armored Division, were combined with the French. Was that the French 2nd Army or 1st Army? Well, anyway, and French Moroccan troops. Have you ever heard of French Moroccan troops? They carry a knife about this long, and they are night fighters, and they always cut their victims' ears and wear them on a leather thong around their throat, and that to them was a symbol of excellence or something. So I had never seen that before. Good thing they were on our side, and they were Moroccan, blacks, dark skinned, but their officers were French white. And their mascot, I can remember, was a goat. But Colemar was a blood. That's the night we spent in the basement, as I told you. And Colemar was a gorgeous area. I would say that half that city was destroyed that night by German guns. If it wasn't the railroad gun, it was the German 88.
What was this like for you? Was he writing home or?
Oh, sure. I don't remember how often he wrote, but he wrote
No, I'm
all
not a
the
good
time.
letter writer. I have to admit that.
But
She
you
writes
wrote
a
all the
beautiful. She wrote. No,
I wrote every day.
Dear Marge, I
Even if
love
it
you.
was
I miss
just
you.
little.
Both things are, I think, well, about 5 lines to a letter, right?
Yeah, he didn't tell me much.
So were you constantly worried or?
Oh, sure. I lived with my parents.
In those days, if you were blessed with a good wife, that's the biggest blessing you could have. And of course that goes today, right? Mother, you got a handkerchief on.
Yeah, here.
You got any cleaners?
I have some.
I did advance how much time have we used up already?
Oh, y'all are doing fine. I think we've been in here about 25 minutes.
Go ahead, young lady, you're doing an outstanding job. You're an excellent interrogator.
What do you remember about the treatment of German civilians after the units entered Germany?
How we treated Germans? Well, we were not nasty to them. Our particular unit was, we stated we'd build it. I'll tell you how this operated. You went into a given town, you picked a house out. Of course, they did the very same thing. We would say, raus mit du in 20 minutes, 20 minutes or half hour. We'd take over the house and stay there as long as we were there, and then they were allowed back. But that's typical of military operation.
Did you pick up anything while you were in Germany?
What?
Did you pick up anything?
Oh, sure. I brought home a German Luger,
Is that what you meant? Yes.
which I took off. As crude as this is going to sound, this was a German sergeant laying in a ditch. And it was, he didn't need it. They did the same thing to us. And I confiscated a P-38, which was taken away from me. A shotgun, German made. I never seen one before, an over and under. Are you familiar with a shotgun? Ours are 2 horizontal barrels. This was up and down. That was taken away from me. But I did bring a Luger home, a SS dress knife, a German helmet, which her brother proceeded to lose for me. That, other than that, that's all.
Describe your duties during occupation.
Oh, I was in occupation many places. Well, still the same division ordnance. We still had complete control of all the vehicles. We arrived May 8th when the war ended in Heidenheim, Germany, and then I was immediately transferred to the 1st Armored with the same job, which was scheduled to go over to Japan. Thank God that the war ended, or I probably would have not made it. But what did you ask me about the German civilians? I'll tell you this. This may sound funny. They know a German name. You know, the Germans. And I'll tell you, if you had a German name, this may sound funny, but you were treated differently. And Hering, as they pronounce it, is strictly German. And I had no problems with German civilians. They were not discourteous to us. Matter of fact, they were very, this is going to sound crude, they were much more friendly than the French.
What was it like when you were going home?
Going home?
Yeah.
Well, I went up to Camp Lucky Strike, which was on the coast of France. And we embarked. I remember the ship, the Coldale Victory. And I said to myself, somebody said to me, seasickness is a matter of mind over matter. We weren't hardly even out of the harbor. I was up on the deck going over that. So I spent 8 days in a bunk. I couldn't eat anything. All you could keep down was lemon, suck on a lemon rind and pieces of crust. But finally, after 8 days, it ended, and by that time I had lost wasn't big anyway, I lost about 8 pounds. So I arrived in...
Yeah, you were down to 120.
Yeah.
When you got home.
Yeah.
That's not much.
I'm not a lover of boats. Are you people? Have you ever been on a boat?
A little bit. A little bit.
Go ahead, young lady. I hope we're not done yet, are we?
No. I was going to ask you, what was it like for you when you knew that he was coming home?
Oh. Well, we always, in our Milwaukee paper, they always listed the names of the fellows that were coming home and the ship they were coming back on. And I guess I knew the ship he was coming home on. So I knew he was going to be coming. Of course, we didn't know exactly what day they'd get in or anything. But, well, we were glad it was over. So,
When you got back, what was the first thing that you did?
Well, we had a big dinner. We had, all right, when I got home I had a duffel bag that weighed more than I did with all the stuff I was carrying, so I unloaded that. And then her mother, I don't know what your favorite meal was, mine is turkey and with all the stuffing, right? We had that. And then we had reserved a hotel room downtown, so we had our second honeymoon in a hotel in Milwaukee, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it wasn't too long. I didn't lay around. I went back to work. I went back to work for the same company, and I eventually ended up being a salesman for some 40-some years. So, life was good to me in that regard. I made good money, and we never wanted for anything, did we? No. Of course, as she'll say today, you always like to spend it. But it's a good thing she's frugal because I'm certainly not.
How has the World War II...
How's the war like?
How has World War II affected your life?
Oh, I think I said this before. To me, you ever hear the expression, either makes a man or a bum out of you? Have you ever heard that? Well, a definite asset to me. It gave me one thing I lacked, self-confidence. I found out I was intelligent, had a high IQ. I found out that I could do anything anybody else could do. So, again, for me, the Army was a definite plus, and I think you agree with that. Right? I never thought I'd have guts enough to go out and detail pharmaceuticals, what they call a cold cell, you know what the expression cold cell? Perfect stranger.
No.
Where you're obligated to sell yourself first before your product. So when they think of sales, when they think of tall, dark, and handsome, well, I'm strictly not tall and dark. But, I was successful at it, and I don't mean that to be conceited at all, because I'm not. No. The Army, for me, was a definite plus.
How has it affected you?
Him being in the
Uh-huh.
Army?
But how
Well,
did you feel?
We got to know a lot of really nice people, made a lot of friends while he was in service. And since then, with our association, people that he wasn't, that he didn't deal with in the service, we've gotten to know them throughout the country. And it's been really good.
It's a big part of our life today. We go to many reunions as we can. This year we've been to, this is the second one, right? And we're going down on May 30th, which is that the true Decoration Day, is it, May 30th?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At it's now Fort Campbell, where we're going to dedicate our KI Memorial, which we donated. I guess, did they solicit funds from the local community or what?
Cool.
The money for this KIA Memorial, where did it all come from? From donations from
Yeah.
GIs? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's this Friday, May 30th, which is now Fort Campbell, Kentucky, at 11 a.m. We're going to be there, God willing.
Well, do you have any stories that stand out in your mind?
I already told you one that will never leave my mind was that buddy of mine who I picked him out in his tank. Never forget it. It's unbelievable what the one weakness in a tank is. It's a formidable weapon while it's moving. Once it's stopped, it's a dead duck. And you know, the Germans, like us, had armor-piercing shells, and what happens? The shell pierces the armor, sets off the ammunition that you store inside the tank, so it's an inferno. The poor guys never knew it hit them, but oh, what a terrible way to go. But that, unfortunately, is war.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else to ask.
I certainly thank you for the privilege of having this interview, and I hope I did a satisfactory job.
Oh, definitely. I need to get you to sign some papers, and I'm going to take the light off.
I wish you good luck in your school.